And again, I'd like to welcome you. The idea of building a resilient community here in Port Alberni is of prime importance to many of us. There's been a great deal of thought going into it from a number of quarters, a lot of activists discussing, and really when the rubber hits the road, the true sustainability is, at least in large part, consists of people doing business locally, buying locally, producing locally, and generating but ideas within the community. And some people have already started doing that.
So I'm the CEO for the Tseshaht First Nation, and I thank Dan for inviting us to be able to share with you some of the things that we're doing. We're a community that's moving forward. First Nations communities are some of the fastest growing communities in Canada these days. And a lot of the, over the last 10, 15 years or so, there's been a lot of changes in that's happened in the courts and that's changed the way government deals with First Nations. It's starting to change the way businesses deal with First Nations, which is starting to be able to change First Nations and how they relate to their communities and the things that they're doing. And we enjoy a great relationship with the city. We have a protocol agreement with the city that we are very appreciative of, and a good relationship with the regional district. We work closely with North Island College. We work closely with the school district. Lots of really good relationships here. And Tseshaht see themselves as an integral part of the Alberni Valley, an integral part of the Port Alberni community. And as they say all the time, they're not going anywhere. They've been here forever, and they will always be here. Okay, so tapping the bar didn't work. Oh, there we go. So those of you who, of course, are from Port Alberni must have seen our administration building. And I just in this light, it doesn't show up that great. But our administration building that sits over top of the Somas River is the focal point of the community. It's actually, I think, made a real change in how Tseshaht is perceived and how Tseshaht members perceive themselves within the community. It's been really important in the last few years in our development. And there's a picture on the right, the lower right there, of the council that kind of made that happen. And this is today's council. The Tseshaht have 4-year terms. Oh, that's falling lower and lower. Okay. Oh, perfect. So led by Chief Les Sam, the council is made up of Mike Watts and Luke George. Some of you know these people: Dennis Bill, Boyd Gallick, Willard Gallick, Richard Sam Sr., Irma Robinson, and Lisa Fred. And I name all of them because the rest of the stuff I'm going to talk to you about what we're doing couldn't be possible without these people. It's a 9-member council. That's a lot of people on a council. I've worked in government for many years with lots of committees and boards, and I can tell you I've never worked with one that is as effective and efficient as this group. They have a single focus. They move forward. There's no dissent. They're all there to do one main thing, and that's to improve the quality of life for the members. We have a number of businesses that we already have and that we are growing, and new ones we're hoping to create. So most of you, I'm sure, have been to the Tseshaht Market or have at least driven past it. If you only drive past it, please stop, go in, get gas, buy stuff. The Tseshaht Market's been there since 1979. It's on the reserve. When you pass the market and the Bank of Montreal, which we own that building, and lease it to the Bank of Montreal, once you've passed that, you've gone off the reserve. The old Sprout Elementary School is just past it. We actually bought that property and are working on plans to develop it. But that's where the reserve ends. The market has been very successful. we are in the process right now of making plans for an expansion. You might have noticed there's a new partner there as far as gas provider that just changed this year, and we feel that's a really healthy relationship that's going to be positive and profit-making for us, and we're continuing to look at growing that business. We actually have an economic development meeting. That's the theme for our community meeting tomorrow, and we'll be talking with the community about some of those plans and some of the other things I'm going to talk to you about tonight. We have Tseshaht's been involved in the forestry industry for at least 15 years now, probably a little bit more. That's how I got involved with them. My previous life, I worked for Ministry of Forests, and when I left government and started consulting, Tseshaht approached me right away and said, would you come and help us build our forestry program? And somehow I went from that to being their CEO, and I really love that. But our forestry business is growing, and if some of you may have read in the paper, we've just concluded a very long negotiation with government. And Les likes to point out that when Tseshaht started that negotiation, I was actually the negotiator for government. So it's funny how things turn. But we've finally reached a conclusion, and that will help us further grow our forest interests. But more importantly, what we have achieved is acquiring area-based long-term licenses. So if you're from Port Alberni, you know the drill. It's like a tree farm license. It's a different form of license, but it's the same concept. Long-term area-based means you manage the land base. This is what Tseshaht has been striving for years and years, so that they can actually have influence. And you're going to see a different style of management. You're going to see integrated resource management out there. They are part of the community just like you are, and they're going to manage that as their backyard, because that's what it is. It's part of their traditional territory, and they're business minded. It's going to be operated as a business, but it's going to take a different approach than industrial model. We have fisheries is another key area of our business, and again, you know, I'm sure this isn't new to you. You've all seen over the years, and some of you may be buyers of some of our members' fish on the side of the road. For years and years, that's been something that's been sort of a how do you describe that commercial industry? It was something DFO would turn away from as long as it was done on the reserve. It was sort of legal and not legal, oddly. But in this last year, we were able to negotiate commercial licenses, and with DFO for sockeye, for the first time, we've had commercial arrangement with for Chinook for a few years, and that was done largely through Tseshaht developing an agreement and a cooperative approach with the sport fishermen and with the commercial fishermen, and together they sorted out how we're going to deal with the allocation. DFO is resisted, but is sort of having to move along for various reasons. So we have in the top right, you can see it, that's our community fishery. There's always been a community fishery up at the dam. We do it a couple of times a week, and that's where fish are communally gathered for and distributed to elders, to disabled, and then if there's a fish remaining, to members. And we do it right there on the beach. People take their fish home and put it in their freezer, smoke it, whatever they do with it. The commercial fishery is different. We have what Tseshaht calls a mosquito fleet, which is basically the members who do fish commercially have their own boats, and it's small scale, little. They have their own nets, and it's largely they fish for themselves, but they're really fishing for their families and their extended families, not just their immediate families. And there are many people who do this on the community that this is their major source of income for the year. It's also their major source of food for the year. And so, you know, it's really a maximizing the use of the resource. And Tseshaht's very, very proud that they have their own fisheries management that they establish at the beginning of the season. They hear what DFO says, and they pay heed to the numbers that they get in the returns, and then they say, here's what we're going to do. And when the fish return was very, very low a couple of years ago, it was Tseshaht who said, before anybody else said it, we're going to shut it down. We're not fishing. They told their members, we're not fishing. They didn't like it. There were some members who really didn't like that news. But we had elders tell them why and explain that we want fish for our children, so we have to stop. We have to respect that we need to give the fish time to recover. And we had really good compliance with that. Today now, we've had the last couple of years good returns. Now we're looking at being able to develop a commercial fishery, and we're looking at how we can take that and create product that we can brand and sell and ship away, sell locally, so that we're not just catching fish and giving it away to the lowest price to the closest buyer. We want to keep those benefits local. And one thing about First Nations doing that is most of the community keeps their money here in Alberni. They don't, I'm not saying they never leave and they don't spend any money in Nanaimo or whatever, but for the most part, the majority of their money is spent here and supports this community. And they're very proud of that. We're looking at developing a greenhouse operation. We're just in the business planning stage, and in fact I was in Montreal last week for one day to visit a greenhouse operation similar to, based on what we're hoping to be able to replicate, but we're looking at being able to grow lettuce for the commercial market, to be able to grow lettuce on Vancouver Island, to be able to sell to retailers on Vancouver Island. Our lettuce comes from California. That's just not right. So we're hoping we can change that. We're working on developing a hydro project. Again, this is in feasibility stages right now, and we'll be giving update to the community tomorrow night about that. A lot of First Nations see these hydro projects, run-of-the-river micro hydro projects, as very good opportunities for generating revenue that we can use to support services to our community. They don't really create jobs. The greenhouse, that's going to create a lot of jobs. It's going to create a lot of jobs for Tseshaht members, but also for other people, because we won't likely fill them all. We're talking about probably as many as 40 full-time, all-year-round jobs. A run-of-the-river operation will maybe employ 1 or 2 people, but it will create a consistent revenue stream that's very secure, as long as you can actually develop the project and get the agreement with BC Hydro. Thanks, guys. You give a good word for us, right? We're looking into opportunities for Aboriginal cultural tourism, and it's surprising in Port Alberni how little of that there is. And then as I work on it, I realize it's not easy. You don't just go, poof, here's a tourism opportunity. But we're looking at some things, and they're quite different from what you might think. And I'm not in any position right now to really share details with you, and it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. But it's worth telling you that we are very seriously looking at how we can move into that sector and provide something that will help attract tourists to Alberni and the area. And how do we do this? We've got really 2 objectives with our economic development. It's generate employment opportunity and create revenue that goes back to the band to support services for the community. That's what it's about. And so for creating employment, we need to prepare our members to be able to be job ready. And we also want to prepare our members just to be employable and to be able to be out and supporting their families and having all those things that as people you gain when you're supporting yourself and you're not dependent on anybody else. That sense of self-worth and the importance that creates generationally as you pass that on to the children. So we created 2 years ago, we created a program called Seeds, and what we took is our social assistance program, which is like UI, and we turned it 180 degrees, and we called it Social Education and Employment Development Services. And if you were coming in for social assistance, you would go through automatically a series of assessments. You would go through, I wouldn't say we don't put them through, you are offered workshops that you participate in, and we help develop a plan. And for some people, it's just, what do you know, their assessment might say, we need to help support this person just to get them to the point where they have the basic needs a person needs to be able to think about education and employment. You have to have food, security, safety. We deal with that if we need to. Other people, we've had a really successful partnership with the school district. We now have over 30 people in the last 2 years who've got their high school diploma going through this program. And it's done right on the reserve. We have a building that houses our centers for doing this. And we have employment. And for those of you who are in the business area, our employment coordinator is Sandra Rose. She's been out and about the town quite a bit in the last month. We can provide incentive support to employers to employ our people. We do job placement, and we provide training. So we're working to help develop skills and get people employed and off of dependency on social services so they can stand on their own 2 feet. And that's an important link to our economic development. So Tseshaht looks forward, is really intent on looking forward. They're not interested in living in the past. And when they look forward, they're not just looking at 5 years, 10 years. And when we go out, and a lot of times I go to meetings, I'm used to, in my culture, we talk 5 years, 10 years. If we go crazy, we talk 20 years. First Nations think in generations. I was at a meeting the other day and somebody said, we have to think 7 generations ahead. And I went, oh my God. But I mean, that's where they come from. And when you think about it, because they know that this is where they will always be, there isn't that question. For some of us, you know, I was raised, I don't say this very often in BC, but I was raised in Toronto. And yeah, I know. And I've moved a lot in my lifetime, but that's not the story for most First Nations people. They like to stay where their home, historic, cultural homeland is. Their traditional territory is here, Alberni Valley, and that's not going to change. And they, as I said, they are a part of the community, and they want to be seen that way, and they want to be a productive part of this community. And they want to be seen that way. They really want to, you know, they've worked really hard in the last few years to raise their profile, but also to contribute in a positive way. Because they know historically how some people perceived First Nations people, you know, Indians. And there's still some of that out there, but they know that they have to demonstrate and show that that is not the way it is today. As I said, the benefits that they generate for themselves will also benefit this community. So I think if you have an opportunity to come and visit us, that beautiful building, it's amazing to me how often people say, oh yes, but I've never come in. It's wide open. We welcome people all the time. We're happy to show people around. We're very proud of it. And so you're welcome to come and see it. And while you're doing that, think about Tseshaht as an opportunity and not as a threat, because that's what they are.